Today I'm joined by a very special guest. Anne Kolton, who's at SK Capital Partners, is helping power the next wave of innovation. I'm Mia Quinn, and this is Sustainably Speaking. Anne, I'm so excited you're here with us today. Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about you and where you are now.
Sure. Yeah. So I currently am at a firm called SK Capital Partners, which is an investment firm that is focused on investing in companies that are in specialty materials, specialty chemicals, ingredients, and life sciences. And I joined there after spending 12 years at the American Chemistry Council, where I was lucky enough to lead communications and sustainability. There's some really interesting developments in the industry.
You have such an interesting perspective now from the lens of private equity. The landscape's evolving quite a bit. What kind of trends are you seeing?
When I joined SK Capital 3 years ago, we were, I would say, sort of peak sustainability, right? There was a lot of momentum. There was a lot of focus right after COVID about how sustainability was going to become even more integrated into everything that industry is doing. But here's the way we think about it at SK. For us, sustainability is a really pragmatic area of focus. We want to do better, right? We want to have lower risk. We want to have a smaller environmental footprint. We want to modernize. We want to be productive and more efficient, all in the name of improving the companies we invest in and getting a greater return on the investment for ourselves and for those who invest their capital with us. The effort to get to greater productivity, efficiency, and lower risk has always been and always will be a hallmark of good investment. And so that's really what we keep at the center of everything we do.
And I like hearing that because it's like doing good, but also being smart about it and making sure that it's profitable can go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think even at its just base level, if you're spending less money on energy, if you're spending less money on water, and if you're getting more out of every hour that you operate, you're being more profitable. You will be more profitable. You will waste less. You will lose less. And so, again, this is just sort of smart business. But whether you love sustainability, you question sustainability, you put profitability first, you put profitability after sustainability, all of these things are, like I said, they're the hallmarks of doing business well and of operating a company well. And they always will be. That's not going to change. No one wants to lose money. No one wants to be wasteful. No one wants to have high risk, right? So that's in your interest for a lot of different reasons.
Is this like obvious to companies, or is this something you're really finding you have to sort of shape?
Yeah, I do think that putting the name sustainability, and for a long time in investment, people were constantly talking about environment, social, and governance, ESG, right? Mm-hmm. Which has now sort of become a term of art that people are staying away from. But I think at some point, it maybe scared people away from what might have been a natural inclination, right? I want to be more efficient. So let's have an energy audit. Let's go figure out where we can save water. Once you start slapping the name sustainability on it and a sustainability initiative, I think a lot of people get anxious that means more costs, longer list of to-dos, et cetera. Whereas maybe if you didn't wrap it up in under the guise of sustainability, again, it sort of just seems like this is good business. And so it makes sense.
Okay, now I'm curious, like, are there any innovations that like you've seen lately that you're excited about that you want to tell us about?
Sure. So, I do spend a lot of time trying to pay attention to what's happening in the sort of new technology space. And so, I think about one of our companies. It's called EcoPol. They make biodegradable water-soluble films, things that you would see in a dishwasher pod or a laundry pod, okay. Which has really revolutionized laundry for the better. So you can use cold water, you use less, you're dosing it properly, you're using the right amount. But there are all kinds of new ways that these really innovative films can be used, whether it's to help make food packaging, more sustainable. Some of the things that we're talking about are ways to use it to deliver vitamins or nutrition or food. So that's a really exciting space. And looking at ways to use plant-based materials to make the film. So it's constantly evolving, and there's so much innovation going on. And one of the things that's exciting about it is you're using so little material to deliver such a big benefit.
Yeah.
And those are, incredibly cool polymers. Some of the things that I've seen recently that are really exciting in the space of chemistry and chemicals and plastics and other materials is this whole trend to using electrochemistry, which can...
Okay, I've not heard this term before.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I hadn't either, but electrochemistry, which is essentially electrifying the reactions that take place in a chemical plant. But what's really cool about it is it allows you to do it at a lower temperature and at a smaller scale. So whereas, the chemical industry of the past 30, 40 years, the plastics industry of the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years required massive plants and huge complexes in one part of the world that then the product needed to be exported and moved around. Electrochemistry, because it can be done at a lower temperature and at a smaller scale and still be profitable, you could take a modular type approach and put a much smaller production facility at the point of use, sort of fit for size, fit for purpose. This is a big transition that has to happen, but there's so many cool things when you look ahead at how this industry is likely to evolve. I know it sounds sort of nerdy, but it's really exciting. And, it shows the level of innovation and adaptation that's just sort of baked into the chemicals, plastics, and materials industry. It's sort of in the DNA. And so people in this industry are constantly looking for ways to do things better and to have a better impact.
Are you seeing much in the medical field?
I think, it's sometimes easy to forget how revolutionary plastics have been in medicine, right? It's really completely changed the way that healthcare is delivered. It's so much safer. It's so much cleaner. And for example, one of the companies that we've invested in has got this incredibly innovative polymer that they put on the inside of catheters. And when, someone is using a port for, let's say, chemotherapy delivery, sometimes even just within the materials that are used for sort of an ongoing port for blood draws, this particular polymer prevents clotting and reduces the rate of infection quite substantially. So here's another example where, we're taking a plastic polymer of sorts, and we're innovating around that basic material to bring an incredible benefit that could truly transform someone's hospital experience. The risk of infection, the risk of clot, when you're dealing with other health complications, that's the last thing you want and you need. And here's a great way.
Everyone knows that's a thing.
That's right.
And it coats the inside of these?
It's a coating that goes on the inside to prevent clotting and further infection.
Wow. I feel like you're kind of in the middle of all these big ideas. What's the most exciting trend you're seeing?
There's so many exciting things going on. And frankly, that's why I love the chemicals and materials and plastics industry, because there's always something exciting happening. But I'd really say there are three big things that seem to be consistent. One, again, is sort of this interest in electrochemistry, which is a complete transformation of how materials are going to be made in the future and could be made, and sort of moving away from these massive big footprints of chemical complexes to things that are more modular and can operate sort of where they need to be and at a scale that's required. The second is really around artificial intelligence and how that is changing everything. I think some of the coolest innovations I've seen are in people using AI to support product development. And then the third thing, I get really excited about advanced and new types of recycling. I think everybody, at least in my world, agrees that plastic is really, really important, and it has transformed our society and has really, lifted a lot of people out of poverty and given them access to resources that they wouldn't otherwise have. But we do know that there's a cost that comes with using plastic. And if we can identify new ways to make plastic more circular, to keep it in the life cycle, right? Or to keep it in cycle, to reuse those molecules over and over, that's a huge solution that the world needs. And it's not just to sort of take your, water bottles and things like that and turn them back into new water bottles. It's things like recycling using different chemistries to help harvest critical minerals and critical metals out of different things like computers or cars. All of that is chemistry. All of that is materials. And all of that is new thinking, right? We really have in the past looked at things as like, yep, that's hard to get, hard to make, certainly harder to take advantage of after it's been used. Now there are ways that we can keep those things as part of, our available resources. And as our world grows and as our needs get more complex, all of that's going to be really, really important. So, these new ways of breaking molecules down, breaking plastics down, and then putting them back together, whether it's in the original form or into something new, that has a just incredible potential.
How is that going to impact longer term, short and long term, U.S. manufacturing? Is that good for U.S. manufacturing?
I think it's great for U.S. manufacturing. Clearly, one of the goals that's being talked about broadly right now is trying to bring a lot of U.S. manufacturing, to revitalize it, to get it going in this country again. But we really shouldn't do that in the way that we've always done it. This is a real inflection point and an opportunity to think about doing things differently, think about doing them in ways that minimize our environmental impact, that are more efficient, that are more productive, that really take that next leap and establish a new, modern, and more efficient manufacturing sector. And I get excited about that. I think it's a real opportunity that we should seize. As you encourage more manufacturing, even if it is sort of newer generations and new types of manufacturing, that brings jobs with it. And frankly, these jobs that can come with manufacturing, especially sort of this new iteration of it, they are high-skilled jobs. They do require a lot of thinking and a lot of responsibility. And so again, it's sort of not your grandfather's manufacturing industry. And I can say that because my father-in-law actually worked in a factory for 40 years. And, we had a conversation not that long ago about just how different that would be today and the skills needed. And it might not sound like it's super exciting on the surface, but when you actually take a look at the direction we could be headed, it is high tech. It is cutting edge. It is really innovative, and it is really exciting. And you're doing something and making things that are incredibly consequential.
Yeah, and you're making things here. I mean, that's really exciting and cool. And then how does AI play into all this? Like you mentioned it as critical. Do you have any examples of what you're looking at?
Yeah. So AI is touching everything, whether it be product development or plant operations or safety culture. It's really astonishing. I'll give you an example. A company that I recently interacted with has developed a new way of inspecting storage tanks, and it's all driven by robotics and AI. And what it does is prevent the need to take a storage tank offline to put somebody inside the tank to do an inspection, which is inherently safer. And it gives you better information and can predict, here's what I see, here's what the robot sees today. We have enough information through AI and machine learning to know if I see that today, I might have this problem in 5 years. Let's go ahead and fix that problem today. Wow. It's really exciting. And then again, on the product development side, it can take decades to try different things and to test different constructions of materials. AI is allowing that to happen so much more quickly, and it helps us know what our need is and figure out how to meet that need in an instant of what it used to take.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
So, Anne, part of the reason I'm excited you're here for a lot of reasons, but I've watched your career. You've had an amazing career. Can we talk a little bit about it?
Sure. Yeah. People ask me how I've ended up where I have ended up at different points in my career. And I often say it's a lot of luck. I've been in the right place at the right time. And then I've just worked really, really hard when I got there. And, the evolution to chemicals and plastics, that certainly wasn't planned, but I had a really formative experience, some sort of early in my career where I had the opportunity to lead public affairs at the U.S. Department of Energy. And when I was there, the secretary was a man named Sam Bodman, who was a chemical engineer, and he'd been the CEO of a chemical company. And I, like many people at that time, was like, chemicals, science, I was a history major. I'm a political person. And he really opened my eyes to the incredible world of science and of chemistry and of chemicals. And we did a lot of work on new energy. It was back in the days, in the early 2000s, when we were talking about limitations on our world's supply of oil. Renewable energy was something very new, so it was a very different time, but really created that excitement in me for the new technology that could be transformational and to allow us to have and make the things that were necessary for a modern world and a continuously exciting and innovative world, but do them in a way that was better with less impact.
So what advice would you have? Someone's listening to this and they're like, that sounds great. I'd love to get into this, either in the capacity of what you're doing, public affairs and the leadership, or maybe, get into a manufacturing facility. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity. Again, it might not be listed on a job board under sustainability, but if you think about the opportunity to be part of this sort of manufacturing renaissance that we're seeing, the green shoots of, all of that is going to be focused on how do we make the most of every pound that we produce. How do we make sure that we're doing that as efficiently and as safely as possible? And I think there's a real need for people who understand the way manufacturing facilities need to work, how they can work, how to keep them safe, how to keep them productive. And then, of course, on the research and development side, people who can make those new materials, people who can, use their imaginations and their innovative, DNA to come up with solutions to the really tough challenges that we face, whether you live in a place like Washington, D.C., or if you live somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa. Our challenges might seem a little different, but at the end of the day, we all need these new materials, these new solutions, and manufacturing is going to be what gets that done.
If you were starting your career today, what field would you jump into?
I would be an engineer. And it's not because I don't love public affairs, and I love the ability to tell stories and sort of translate complex, difficult ideas into things that make sense to people. But at the beginning of that is the engineering that makes it all happen. And if I was a young person today, that's where I would focus. I think not only is the need great, which has been well established, people talk about STEM all the time, but I think that it's really exciting. And I think the kind of innovation that's going to happen through engineering over the next 10, 20, 30 years is going to be mind-blowing. And getting to be a part of that would be incredibly rewarding and probably pretty profitable too.
Thank you so much for being here today. It's just been so great to reconnect and talk with you and get your insight. I love hearing about these kind of innovations and how people like Anne are taking big ideas and making them into reality. If you want to hear more, we'll see you next time on Sustainably Speaking.